Hi, I'm Dr. Ron Lieberman. I'm the president and CEO of Tristate Physical Medicine Associates, and I've specialized in interventional spine procedures for the past 20 years. If you have chronic back pain or if you have sciatica, a lot of people walk around in denial on how their back pain is really affecting them. I've seen hundreds and hundreds of people that present to me with chronic back pain, sometimes with leg pain as well, also known as sciatica. And this pain percolates every aspect of their lives. By the time you see me, you're depressed. You're on the sidelines of life. You feel helpless. I see this all the time. And the worst that can possibly happen, and what I see is, even though you know, it's not just you feel alone. And they're at a loss. And it's almost like self-deprivation of an opportunity that could potentially change their lives. But there's a way out. There's a lot of information ahead. So please pay attention. The Harris Pulse study showing that chronic severe low back pain has outpaced the incidence of painful arthritis, diabetes, and cardiovascular disease. It affects their ability to relate with their kids, their wife, other family members. It affects their ability to be productive. And their back pain becomes the central event of their daily lives. They literally schedule their lives around their back. The pain that they're holding in comes out in the form of anger because they just can't control their pain. Let's get real about this. You've tried everything under the sun, and some have tried opioids, and you get lost in the opioid trap, spinning out of control and developing problems associated with pain medications. It gets so possessive of what you want to do in your life that you're not able to express yourself in a way that people that are close to you even understand. They just don't. You lose hope. It's almost like you're in bondage with this pain. You're not free. You're stuck, and you can't get out. You are looking for options, and you haven't been able to find it. So minutes turn into hours, hours into days and months and years and decades, and you've been living a life of unnecessary suffering. There's a way out for everybody, and that includes you.
And with us right now is our guest for today, Dr. Ron Lieberman, President and CEO of Tristate Physical Medicine Associates. Welcome to the show. So glad you're with us. Listen, we're here, we're talking about backs, we're talking about health and wellness, one of the things that are near and dear to my heart. But pain is also part of health and wellness. We want to talk a little bit about back pain, MRIs, and we're going to go through the gamut of things. But first, please tell us a little bit about yourself and what we're doing here.
Sure. I'm a board-certified physical medicine and rehabilitation specialist, and I've been practicing, actually not practicing, I've been performing interventional spine care for over 20 years. And I've been through the history and the development of different procedures and found a solution that's been a chronic problem, if you will, for many patients that's been quite successful.
Dr. Lieberman, we hear about these numbers, and I say they're crazy numbers. Didn't know it was this prevalent throughout the country here, 72 million. Touch on that, what that means to our listening audience and viewing audience, please.
Sure. The first thing we want to do is we want to define the problem, Mike. And so one of the problems is that we haven't had an effective treatment for chronic low back pain, and it's borne out by a statistic that came out in August 2022, Newswire, and it demonstrated that 72.3 million people are out there with severe chronic back pain. It's been so much that the incidence has surpassed people with cardiovascular disease, diabetes, and even painful arthritis. So it's showing us that whatever we're doing for chronic severe low back pain, it's not working.
And when you say that, Dr. Lieberman, I mean, again, no fault of no one and whatnot, whereas it is just the way the back is so complicated and what needs to be done, you know, can you touch on that?
Sure, yeah. Sure. Another one of the problems is that the actual source of the chronic back pain has gone just missing. And so, as you would expect using common sense, an effective treatment is based on an effective diagnosis. So that if we're not making an effective diagnosis of the structural source of the problem, we're not going to be able to treat the problem, right? And inside of that issue is that not uncommonly MRIs will show normal discs, but they're going to miss, not uncommonly, they're going to miss imperceptible abnormalities of the disc that end up being related to chronic debilitating low back pain.
Right. So when you talk about MRIs, I mean, we go through the list of things. Again, for a layman such as myself, there's an X-ray. Doesn't really, going to do none. Then you're telling me an MRI is not going to show it as well.
Or a CT myelogram,
Right.
Or plain CAT scans. So the problem is that another one of the problems is that people are left with wondering, like, what are they going to do? And so it leaves them kind of stuck, and it affects them personally, it affects them professionally, and it affects them privately.
Right. And when you say privately, I mean just within the everyday functioning of the household, work, that sort of thing. We talk about fusions. I mean, we touched on that a little bit prior. Talk to us about that, where that goes into. I'm a candidate sitting here, not only a candidate, someone who's had it done.
So when people are at their wits' end and they've tried everything under the sun, they're given the option of spinal fusion. Or they're given the option of an artificial disc replacement.
Right.
And so one of the things that they're not aware of is that actually sets the stage for further degeneration, and it's really not treating the underlying problem. So they're just not aware that there's other options that are out there, right, other than surgery of fusion.
And the underlying problem I know it could be vast, many of things, but some of the problems that exist that you would find with your practice.
Well, that underlying problem is really defined when we get into the principles. But before we get into the principles, we want to get into the possibilities.
Possibilities, right.
So the possibilities are people being aware that there are other options that are associated and linked to actual outcomes measures that are well documented and espoused by the American Academy of Orthopedic Surgery using something that's called the Outcomes-Based Electronic Registry Database. And so and what they've found is that there's 70% improvement in their function as well as decrease in their pain at 3 years, and now it's actually extending beyond 3 years into 4 years. So people they're not aware of that. That's part of the possibilities of so inside the possibilities also them having hope and that there's other options out there for them, so that they don't have to live in the degree of physical dysfunction, emotional dysfunction that we refer to in the opening part of the video.
Right, and some of the possibilities besides, again, being surgically, so to speak, repaired, it doesn't always work. I mean, one of the things that I found personally with mine, we went through shots, we went through a microdiscectomy, and then it was after a few years with the fusion. So you're telling me there's possibly could have been other, right?
Absolutely.
And please expound on that.
And we're gonna get into that because surgery doesn't actually address those issues.
Right.
It doesn't. I'm not putting off. I'm not. Just.
No, it's fine.
But it doesn't get into those issues. It doesn't address that cause. The alternative treatment for this is really to give people a lot of hope. I mean, nothing works for everybody. It's
right.
And it's not for everybody. It doesn't work for everybody. It's not a guarantee like anything else. But certainly there are no other studies of any treatment, that show the outcomes measures that I just showed you. 70% relief, improved function, improved pain.
Say that again because that's 70%.
70.
Right.
There's no competition with that. And the procedure has leveled the playing field. Again, using the orthopedic spine surgery technique or way of measuring who were the right people and what were the outcomes measures.
Right.
That's pretty much their Bible, the Oberg assessment of whether or not something actually works.
So when someone comes to see you, Dr. Lieberman, in your practice, and we've been treated by someone else, and again, this is not to point fingers or to anything like that, are you able to assess and to bring it back or in other words, what I'm saying, once work's been done, is it, over? I'm not talking about a fusion, maybe the shots or microdiscectomy or whatnot. Can we work with something like that? Because what it is, it's again, lack of treatment. I mean, you spoke about that before briefly. Talk to us about that a little.
Well, there's hope for you, Mike.
Right. There you go. Like you said, you need hope.
And the reason why there's hope for you is because the problem that we haven't talked about yet was never treated. So, and there's still access to that problem and fixing that problem. And we'll discuss that in the possibilities.
Right, and the possibilities and people in the pit. You talk about that. Is that what you're talking about a little bit as well?
People in the pit are problems. We haven't been able to help people, right? So we're not happy about that. And there's people that are left out there that are they're left. They have no hope.
Right.
And there's a cascading effect into how it affects their individual lives. Everyone's private lives are different that we don't even know about. Right. And it's invisible. It's an invisible issue.
And one of the things, I know we're about out of time in this first segment, but I wanted to touch on briefly, and we could touch on it in the next segment as well, is preventing it. I mean, you touch on it. Is it exercise? Is it weight? Is it all kinds of?
That's such a good question.
That's
such a good question, because as we get older, the center of the disc starts to dry out. There are components in that disc that hold on and attract water molecules. And as time goes on, those molecules become less and less and less, leading to less water within the center of that disc. It's something called, there's hydrophilic molecules. Hydro means water, philic means love. And so that love affair over time degrades. And when that degrades, that leads to stress on the disc, and that disc breaks down. And that's kind of like, it's just going to happen, Certainly if you think about, genetics. There's a genetic predisposition. You can't get around your genes. That's the way it is, just blueprint. But there's a term called epigenetics, and epigenetics is, okay, what are we doing around those genetics that could accelerate that problem? Not necessarily accelerate the loss of the water content, but accelerate or increase stress on the disc. Obviously, weight's an issue. Right. Obviously, it's mechanics in terms of, are we going to stress, are we going to cause a torsional stress, a flexion stress on that disc? Right now, you and I are stressing our discs. Why do you think?
Just the weight, the sitting, just keeping ourselves upright.
It's not a quiz. It's okay. You're turning red. Don't turn red. No, because the maximum amount of stress in a disc is in the sitting position.
Right.
That's it. So that's why, you don't want to necessarily drive around like that, but that's why sitting at 120 degrees instead of 90 degrees, that's the least amount of stress. When you're in the sitting position.
I love it. Listen, we're going to talk more about this stuff here. Stick around to the Mike Lopez Show. We'll be right back with more from today's guest, Dr. Ron Lieberman. Be right back.